when you're in pain, soothing as a springtime rain, to have a friend right in your corner. Your heart will feel a little warmer. Tender loving care, tender loving care. Each warm and friendly touch lets someone know you care so much. Tender loving care, tender loving care.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Greenbrier Almond, and thank you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. Over the years, we've been talking a lot about this interface between Christianity and medicine. And I want to continue a discussion and add to it about something I've learned, maybe new terminology, maybe a new way to say something old, at the American Psychiatric Association meeting in Toronto, Canada. I just returned from there right after the Strawberry Festival week here in May 2015. That's moral injury. Moral injury can be defined as perpetuating or failing to prevent, bearing witness to, or learning about acts that transgress deeply held moral beliefs and expectations. And moral injury was a main topic at our meeting. In fact, the overall topic was dealing with the heart and the soul, the mind and the body. And I had 21 hours of my 50 hours of continuing education dealing with that topic of moral injury. An example of moral injury is child abuse, and it's a topic we don't want to talk about really. It's hard to talk about, but in April of this year, as we do every April, we have Child Abuse Month, and our local newspaper publishes a whole page of information about how to identify child abuse. So thank you, Record Delta and their school programs, emphasizing what to do to help a child and how the child can deal with child abuse. And many, the whole community comes together. We have a candlelight vigil for children who have been harmed through child abuse. All sorts of things happen in April. And I'd like to lift up some things that are common, just to refresh your memory, and then talk to a child that may be watching about if you have to go to another adult or another person, how to help the child make that decision. So this is a big topic. For the child, if a child is abused or neglected, there are certain things that will be signs. Just like if you think about a storm coming, red at night, the red sky at night, it's a sailor's delight. The next day would be nice. Red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. Usually there'll be a storm. And I know that from growing up. My mother used to say that a lot, and I've seen that firsthand in the Philippines where they have horrible storms and a red sky in the morning, everyone's warning. But there are certain signs for child abuse and neglect. The first would be unusual school attendance. We've placed a great deal of emphasis on a child attending school, and it can't go, I think it's 6 days now without getting a lot of attention on why are they truant, what's happening in the home, what's happening that the child's not there, in case the parents doesn't know. Maybe the child's delinquent, maybe they're on the bus and then they get off someplace and go to a friend's home. But we start worrying about it almost from day one, and there can be major punishment to the family really, or whoever the adult is responsible for the child if they're truant very long. So school attendance is a red flag. Chronic absenteeism, again, is another way to say that. Sometimes children are out and they do have a doctor's slip. And doctors have been warned, by the way, and as a doctor I can speak to this, don't too easily say to the child's parent, oh, I'll sign a slip, that sore throat deserves 10 days off or something like that. Well, Of course, most of those sore throats are viruses, and most of them are going to go away in 10 days, but the child is not infectious to someone else, and they can go back to school. There are other things they can do. In other words, chronic absenteeism should not be allowed by a professional. And there are reasons, of course, children may be off and may have to repeat a year or because of injury or disease. But that's a red flag. Chronic hunger, tiredness, and lethargy. We found in major storms that we have that there's some children, if the school is closed, and sometimes in the wintertime it is closed for a week at a time, that children come back to school very hungry. And so then we know maybe there's not enough food in the home. Thanks to many good civic organizations, we've identified certain children at risk, and there are backpacks that children can take home on Friday, contain food and other things that they will need, toothpaste, toothbrushes, things like that you think a family might have, but they don't have. And so these are all there for the child, so they're not neglected, not abused. There's begging or collecting leftovers. Again, a sign of hunger. When I was first aware of that type of hunger, reading a Jack London book, I was in 7th grade, and read all of those Jack London books in the 6th and 7th grade, Call of the Wild, and it was just White Fang, and they were beautiful stories. In one story, Jack London has a man who has been starving in the Yukon, and finally he's found, and they bring him back, and they're going to take him by boat back from the Yukon down to San Francisco. And they notice that he, after the breakfast, he's bulging. Well, he's grabbing rolls anyway and putting them in his pouch, in his shirt, and eating them, stocking up his room, because I guess he's afraid of ever being hungry again. So certainly begging or collecting leftovers is a red flag. Could be a neglect or abuse happening in the home. Assuming adult responsibilities for other siblings. We have certain rules because of the society we live in, what we've learned about how to help protect children, that we do not allow a child second or third grade, second grade, first grade, kindergarten, pre-K, to get off a school bus unless there's an adult there that will meet the child. Sometimes there's a 4th grade child who says, I want to be responsible for my kindergarten child, brother or sister, but we should not allow that. We shouldn't let a child take on adult roles. And if that's there or it's beginning to happen, then it's a red flag. It's a warning that something may be amiss. And of course, it's not to say that a neighbor can't help out a neighbor, as long as the school bus driver knows what's going on. One adult helping another is certainly okay if they're not blood. And there are all sorts of circumstances that come up, and the school wants to work with the families, whatever their circumstances may be. Reporting no caretaker at home. Of course, if a child doesn't identify anyone at home, that's a problem. When I was working at Rock Cave Clinic over a 12-year period, I had different times we would send out a social worker to a home, and no one seemed to be there. We couldn't find anyone at home. Go different times, the social worker would try again and again. And that's certainly a problem for the child, and it means something's going on in the home. Poor hygiene. It's not, we don't all need to be spit polished like we're in the military. Children can be children. They can. My mother's always described her home as comfortably messy, and our clothes were generally clean in the morning at least, and we had a bath in the end of the day, and so Mother did the best she could. But if there's poor hygiene, a child's unbathed, not brushing their teeth, all those things are warning signs that there could be abuse or neglect. Squinting, again, maybe people not getting their glasses, their eyes checked and so forth, squinting to read the board, it's a neglect. Of course, we have screening tests, we have hearing tests, we have even tests for kyphosis and scoliosis, and the nurses come and do a great job of screening in the schools. When I was president of the American Academy of Family Physicians of West Virginia, we had a grant given to us by the Benedum Foundation, Michael Benedum, the oil wildcatter who left so much money, and his foundation's wonderful, but $1 million that year to be spent on children getting to see a dentist, getting a toothbrush and some toothpaste. And we did that through the 4-H Extension Program, the West Virginia University Extension Service, and it was a worthwhile project. We changed the law so that a dental hygienist could be out of the dentist office and be in the school and screen children for dental decay early on, and so that's important. But if a child is squinting, or they don't have good hygiene, or they don't know about teeth brushing, those things point toward neglect. Unsuitable clothing. Of course, clothing is always being watched by the teacher, the principal, others. We want children to be modest and to be dressed appropriately, but sometimes children don't have clean clothes, and we know, talking to principals, that they have extra clothes available. If a child comes and needs a change of clothes, they can help out. But if there's unsuitable clothing, that's a sign something's wrong in the home. An untreated injury or illness, things like that come up. Often child abuse is identified in an emergency room setting or a pediatric office where the child is, during the exam process, is unclothed, and you see different bruises of different ages, or different burns, wounds that are healed in different places. And of course that points toward abuse. A lack of immunizations. West Virginia has a very strong law about immunizations, but if a child or a mother or father were neglecting that in some way, then they're breaking the law in West Virginia, and we want every child to be abused. If there's 5 or 10% of the kids in a class that don't have an immunization, then say the measles can get into this school and spread, and there's consequences to that, pneumonias and encephalitis, and bad things can happen. So those immunizations are there for a purpose, but sometimes they're not done in a timely way, and that may point toward abuse. Some children have exposure to the elements, to being bitten by mosquitoes too much, or being frostbit, and they're not having the right footwear, things of that nature. And then, of course, height and weight not measuring up for the child. Every child, according to age, should be within a range, height and weight. And it could be a small child, it could be 20% height and 20% weight, but that matches. It doesn't have to be 90% in both cases. And we worry about the opposite, children who are fed too much, maybe to keep them quiet, maybe too much sugar, and then they're obese already when they're young. At the Board of Education meeting the other day, we were talking about a child that's like 300 pounds, and that's a big issue for the child. So height and weight is significant, that we know about that. Well, those are ideas that are in the newspaper here in Buchanan about child abuse and child neglect. But if a child is watching this, or a grandparent or parent, and they're beginning to wonder, well, how can we get the support or the care we need if there's something going on, an abuse or neglect going on, so that the moral injury does not continue. We have a window of hope. If we can help a child before 3rd grade, most doctors are taught this, that's pretty corrective. The child can be expected to go on and have a full life. And they can do it whether it's 7th grade or 9th grade or 10th grade or whatever time it happens, but it takes more effort to correct what's happening to a child. The resiliency of a child is such that they can catch up if they're younger. But if a child is needing to feel better about himself or herself, of course they can talk with a close friend. We all have peers that lifelong friends, so we've known, and those friendships begin at a young age, and it's good. It's good that children can share with one another. Children can overcome a lot by discovering their talents, and a parent is the one who can help them most. Musical traits run in families, and I'm a doctor. My dad was a doctor. I made house calls with him. Things like that. You discover a lot of traits about talents and so forth from your parent. Making friends. Teachers are always on the lookout to play games where the children are included. And it's important to belong to a group. And so making friends is an issue that we look for in school to help the child develop. Finding out about jobs and career opportunities. Again, there's school counselors. One of our goals, the Board of Education goal, is to have employability for our students. Of course, we have the trade school here in the county, and that's a wonderful blessing that Lewis County and Barber County come over. We all use the same trade school. But what a blessing to help children get jobs and career opportunities, and the school counselor will guide a child. Solving difficult problems can be a youth leader. We had another seminar about Create Buchanan and Create West Virginia, and we were meeting at the high school about this, and it came up as to how to solve the difficult problem of just helping the child, how to reach them. And we talked about mentoring at the level of coming into, say, the middle school at lunch hour, and then there would be, say, 8 children at a table. There might be a doctor, a lawyer, a preacher, someone who's screened and an appropriate person, come and eat lunch and chat with people. And that would be a way to help them maybe solve a difficult problem, maybe take a personal interest in them. The idea in mentorship is that if there's an adult that can take an interest, then that can do a lot to correct a deficit. Getting along with family members, sometimes we have to go to our grandparents to get help, or another relative, aunts and uncles, watch out for their children, their nieces and nephews. And there are family feuds. We all know about these things. But at the beginning level, maybe going to a trusted relative or an older adult and saying something is wrong with my family. And the child may not even be able to define that, but we can figure that out. If there's a fear of an adult, maybe that child is fearing an adult who has been offending them and abusing them in some way, and that would be normal, but the parent or another adult in the home needs to be looking out for that type of fear. Feeling more comfortable at a home. And sometimes we have a lot of runaways from time to time, and there's a program that was active in our community. I'm not sure it is right now. I haven't heard about it for a while, but the parents agree to get together if their child has been a runaway and another family has a child that's been a runaway. They get together, they have group meetings, and then they will say to the children involved, okay, you can run from our home to this other home, and you'll be welcome there. You don't have to go out on the street and disappear into our society. A huge number, I've heard the number 10,000 disappear every year in America. And we're a nation of over 300 million, and it boggles my mind, but what if a child ended up in Nashville or New York City or Hollywood or someplace? I mean, who knows whatever's going to happen to that child, and it's going to be tragic. But parents can set up these groups where the children can run to another person's home, and that's, I'm sure that the coaches, the teachers, other people who care for children professionally are on the lookout for that if they have to help a child in an emergency like that. Handling drugs or alcohol. We have a big issue. I suspect once a week, once a month would be every 2 weeks maybe an incident where a child brings alcohol or drugs to school. Usually, of course, they find it in the home and they're bringing it in, and that's a no-no, and they can't give it to any other person. We have to deal with it as an offense, but we're trying to mend the fence. We're not trying to ruin a child's life, but we can't have drugs or alcohol in the school. Finding time or a place to study is an issue sometimes. Children, I have posted a picture even today on Facebook, and it was of the city library. I was walking by and saying, oh, I have fond memories of that place, and had my little smartphone and took a picture. Anyway, put it up on Facebook, and now all sorts of people are responding to that picture, saying that was their favorite place in town when they were youth. They would go to the library, they would study, they would read, they developed their love of reading from the public library. And it's a great gift to Buchanan, and it's centrally located right on Main Street. But some children may not know where they can go. We have the Brooks Hill Library, way out in the country. What a gift that is, that we have that, and we have the Helvetia Library. Other communities, Banks Fire Department has the bank of computers there for students to come and study. So we have a lot of resources like this, but a child may not know about that, but need to be pointed toward those. If a child is in school and they're shy, or they've just moved, or they're not improving like they want to, hopefully they can go to a teacher or coach and say, I need to have a better game. I need to do better in school. I don't want a C minus. I think I'm a B plus person, and the teacher will help them out. Extra assignments, extra care. One of my great experiences was Len Westfall, who became superintendent of schools, but was an English teacher when I knew him. And I was in the 11th grade, and we were reading American literature, and he said, I want you to read an extra book every week, and we'll have an after-school discussion about that book. And I read Thomas Paine, I read Thomas Jefferson, I read Benjamin Franklin, all the source material for our American history, and it was great. It was quite a gift, and I needed challenged, I suppose. I mean, that was what Len Westfall was seeing maybe at that time. The extra assignments I could handle, and it would help me, and it certainly did. It helped me to be more successful as a person. So we can go to our teachers and our coaches. Staying in school to graduate. We always want to have destination graduation. At the end of, as the 29th day of May, we have graduation in Buckhannon High School, and it looks like right now, of the kids who can graduate, about 22 are not going to, but we hope that even those 22 will come around and take remedial classes and catch up. And it's never too late. We want everyone to graduate from high school. It's hard to imagine existing in our society without that foundation of knowledge. In fact, it seems to be, the trend would be to go on and become an electrician or a nurse, LPN, or something else, another vocational school training to really succeed in life, to get away from the minimum wage job to maybe the $20 an hour job that they could get, or better than that. And many skills are highly valued in our society, but it takes further education. A lot of times there's sports and clubs, and kids need to be specific about their interest. I have loved Boy Scouts. I love the fact of coming up through the ranks and getting merit badges and becoming an Eagle Scout. And it's changed me in ways that it's hard to measure how valuable that was. Just the encouragement it gave me to know that I could achieve that. And that's not for everyone. We have an excellent 4-H program and an FFA program, and many children can actually pay for their education by raising animals and raising gardens. And we have a major livestock auction at the end of July every year at the high school, and those are wonderful things that happen in our community, but a child needs steered toward activities like that. And then feeling like you belong. Of course, having a lifelong friend or having friends being included is important. We're going to have a after school, after graduation party where children will stay overnight at the high school, and they'll be supervised, and it'll be a safe place for them to be. It will be a way to belong with their class one more time. I should say in closing that a year from now, our high school class of 1966 will have a reunion. We're already planning that. In other words, 50 years out of Buckhannon Upshur High School is very, very valuable to us. We were launched together. We were sent out into the world together, and we have our own stories. We have some have been more successful than others, and unfortunately 40 have passed on now, cannot even come, but we want everyone to come back to the reunion and talk about themselves, talk about their life, and we want to share life's experiences. And the foundation of it, of course, is the school system. Well, until the next time then, this is Dr. Greenbrier Allman thanking you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. I've devoted more or less 2 programs to this idea of moral injury and the corrective measures to it. I think it's very important for us to steer the next generation of children. So grandparents, parents, older brothers and sisters, and of course the children themselves can be enriched if we care for one another. And the special thanks, of course, to Channel 3 for the opportunity to come your way each week and talk about tender loving care issues like this. We'll see you next week.
Stories of a West Virginia Doctor, written by Dr. Harold D. Allman. A collection of 55 short stories about his experience as a small-town doctor in central West Virginia. And Tender Loving Care. Stories from a West Virginia Doctor, Volume 2, written by Dr. Greenbrier Allman, using videotapes to write 70 additional stories of his father's very colorful life as a small-town doctor. They can be found for purchase at Amazon.com and most local bookstores. Tune into Channel 3 Buckhannon for Tender Loving Care with Dr. Greenbrier Allman, where he talks about the connection between Christianity and medicine.